Welcome back to this next episode of our little animal welfare rundown. In the last episode, we talked about all the different kinds of animal shelters that exist, at least within the US. Today, I thought we'd kind of go inside and talk about all the different departments. So there are a ton of different jobs within an animal shelter, and there are a ton of different roles that make it function, as well as making it a successful service for the community, as well as just providing some good community building opportunities, coming together to care for those less fortunate than us. All of these roles come together to contribute to the overall amount of lives saved. So whether you know it as the live release rate or the save rate, this is a number that all organizations track, and it is the number of animals released alive from the shelter. That can be through adoptions, return to owners, or transfers to partner organizations. This is a huge number, not only because it measures how many lives were saved, but it also measures how well the shelter works. So it's really important to acknowledge that everyone is working towards this same goal, and all of that work can be reflected in the live release rate. As I've said before, there are a ton of different shelters, and they all kind of divide up the work differently. So some places may have different roles consolidated into one title, and some might split them up with multiple people working to fulfill whatever the duties are. But we're all working together to help each other as much as we can. So if I can ever help clean a kennel or throw some laundry in the washer or do some dishes, I'm going to do that, because I know that all of that working together helps us reach our goal. So I guess we'll start with the front of the house. So when you walk into a shelter, you're going to come to some kind of front desk with some kind of guest services staff. A lot of shelters will kind of tap volunteers to fill those roles, which is really great. So these are people who are going to tell you where you need to go if you want a cat, if you want a dog, if you're here looking for your lost animal, if you're here to buy a microchip or a city license, if you need to go to the clinic or the foster, or you're a new volunteer. They're kind of the traffic crossing guards. A lot of times these people are also going to be part of the adoptions department. So adoptions is exactly what it sounds like, processing adoptions. Counselors here are responsible for a variety of duties. Their main goal is to complete all of the paperwork needed to get an animal into its forever home. Not only are they responsible for getting animals into homes, but they're also following up on adoptions to make sure the animal's settling in well, and to make sure everything is going well, see if they need any follow-ups through the vet clinic or with a previous foster. In many places, the adoption counselors are also responsible for doing meet and greets. Now, meet and greets are a way for potential adopters to meet, usually dogs or any kind of animal, to make sure that they have good vibe and make sure they are a good fit for their home. So it's a controlled way to meet this new animal outside of their kennel and to kind of see if they're going to fit well with your home. They might also be responsible for doing things that are normally called dog-to-dogs. So that is a controlled way for your personal dog to meet your potential new dog. Adoption counselors are often responsible for facilitating that as well. A lot of nonprofit shelters also have some kind of retail store where you can buy supplies for your new pet, whether that's collars, leashes, tags, bowls, beds, anything like that. Adoption counselors may also be responsible for facilitating the sales of those items. So adoptions is really a huge role. They wear many different hats, and they are often the first point of contact when you walk into an animal shelter. They're hugely responsible for the live release rate, and they're essential for communication across the shelter to make sure the animals that are adopted out are getting everything they need, and they are all set up for success going into a new home. Okay, next we'll talk about animal care. Usually this department is divided up between a cat team and a dog team. Sometimes shelters, smaller shelters, will have people who take care of all animals regardless of species. And then members are usually generally known as animal care technicians. Sometimes they're called kennel technicians, things like that. So they are responsible for all of the cleaning, feeding, laundry, dishes, and often enrichment and walks and things like that for all of the animals in the shelter. So without animal care technicians, the shelter essentially couldn't function. They ensure the animals are clean, fed, and comfortable throughout the day. They make sure they have adequate water at all times. They make sure they have toys that are appropriate for them, and they make sure that any special needs for those animals are met. So if you have a cat that's super shy, they're gonna make sure they have a little hidey box. If you have an older dog, they're gonna make sure they have adequate bedding for any joints that might be achy or difficulty getting up, anything like that. If they are known to chew up tennis balls, they're going to make sure that they don't have tennis balls. And then a lot of times, if there are animals on special diets, they're going to make sure that they are following those instructions. Now, with help from volunteers, Animal Care is also responsible for getting dogs out of their kennels. A lot of places will strive to do twice a day outside of the kennel, whether that's a walk or into a play yard, and that's pretty much the golden standard, what everyone strives for between ACTs and volunteers. But they are at least getting them out once a day, depending on weather and things like that. Now, in some places, the ACTs are the ones doing the matchmaking, so they are the ones doing the meet and greets, doing the dog to dogs, and kind of, feeling out what is going to be best for the family in front of them. ACTs have a huge responsibility, and they are so essential to everything that goes on in a shelter and getting these animals through the system. They also often have the biggest connection with these animals. So anytime I, as a vet tech, have a question about an animal, I know that there's some ACT out there who will know all the answers to my questions, whether that's how they've been eating, how they've been outside, how they are with handling, and how I should best approach them so that we are both safe and I'm not taking them back a step in their behavior or anything like that. We also rely on ACTs to report anything out of the ordinary. So especially with huge shelters with huge populations like on site, techs aren't out there all of the time, so we really rely on ACTs to tell us when something is out of the ordinary. And again, they're gonna know the animal's behavior the best, so if they are not acting right, they are gonna know. So we really rely on them to tell us when something's wrong. Okay, next we'll talk about our animal behavior teams. A lot of times these teams are solely focused on dogs, although a lot of shelters are bringing into place more cat behavior programs as well, because we get a lot of cats that come in, not only like ferals, but things like cats that have only been inside a house and interacted with one person, and then if something happens to that person and they come to this new environment, they don't want anything to do with that. Animal behavior team members are responsible for assessing all of the animals for any behavior issues that might come up. So whenever an animal is cleared of any medical issues or legal issues or stray weights or anything like that, after they are cleared of all of that, they go to the behavior staff and they will be evaluated to see if they have any kind of behavior triggers. There are a variety of tests then to see how they respond to different degrees of touch on their different parts of their bodies, to see how they respond to different kinds of people like men with beards, children, little babies, see how they do with other dogs, see how they do with cats. They'll also see how they respond to different kinds of situations. So different tests they'll do, they'll like have food in front of them and have like a fake arm that they'll try and put around them when they're eating to see if they react to that. For that, they're testing for resource guarding. That's basically like, don't touch what I'm interacting with right now. And then they're also going to see how shut down a lot of them are. So a lot of animals, especially ones that are coming from, homes into this strange, scary situation for whatever reason, they're gonna be completely shut down and shy and scared and just not interact at all. So a lot of those tests that they're gonna try and do aren't going to be quite as accurate because the animal is not in their normal state. So they're gonna also kind of gauge how much they can do with that animal to see if they are able to get accurate results with their tests. So after all these tests, the behavior team will make recommendations. If they don't have any issues and nothing's wrong, they're like happy, healthy, good with most things, then they're going to be cleared for adoption. If they have some minor issues or they're too shut down to even complete these tests accurately, they might recommend a foster home. Depending on the issue, they may also start a behavior modification plan. So that's basically a training plan. The behavior team working with them consistently to help modify their behaviors. So getting them more comfortable with men or children, getting them comfortable with like feeding and people being around their food when they are eating, getting them more comfortable with like taking toys away. And they're doing all that to make sure that they are going to be a safe adoption candidate. So they're trying to modify their behaviors to make sure that they don't end up coming back under bite quarantine. So the behavior team is also responsible for putting some restrictions on animals to make sure that they are going to a safe home where they won't be put in a situation where they might bite. So that can be no children under the ages of 14, or no babies, or no cats. They may also talk with the adopters to see how comfortable they would be knowing all of the behavior tics that this animal might have. And then if they find that, you know, those adopters aren't comfortable with that, or it's not a good home, like they are planning to have a baby or something like that, the behavior team will also be really helpful in finding a new potential friend for them. Behavior knows these animals really well too, so they are going to be able to do a bit of matchmaking for someone who is looking for something specific or has some kind of specific housing situations. Like an elderly person, they will know who will be good behavior-wise for someone like that, know who would be good around babies and who would be good around cats and things like that. So they are going to be a huge resource for making these matches with different adopters. Now, the fun part of behavior team is running playgroups. So a lot of shelters will do some kind of playgroups with some frequency throughout the week. So some places will do them every single morning, some will do them a couple times a week, or just on the weekends. So behavior team sits down and evaluates all their animals and sees who will be good, who has a good play style to match with this one, who is more aggressive, who's more submissive, and then they make lists of groups that can go together and have playtime. Now, through all those playgroups, they are there monitoring the playtime so that if anything happens, they can jump right in and they can make those notes in the behavior chart. So if they see some kind of new weird behavior, they can write that down and monitor it. So there are so many fun opportunities working in an animal shelter. So many great opportunities for a fun and fulfilling career in animal welfare. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.